If you've ever wondered where buyers are actually looking in Brisbane, this video will be really useful because I have analysed the top 10 suburbs across all of Greater Brisbane where 3-bedroom house listings are getting the highest number of views per property, and then I've done the same for 4-bedroom houses across suburbs of Greater Brisbane. So I do want to be clear up front because this is just a snapshot of buyer attention. Because in property, of course, the number of views per listing always is an indicator of buyer demand, and this happens prior to the volume of people picking up at open homes. So 2 quick caveats before we jump into the rankings. First of all, these are raw views per listing, and this means it doesn't adjust for how many properties are listed in each suburb at the same time, and it also means that a suburb with fewer listings can see higher views per listing based on a smaller volume of homes available at that time. Second, it also doesn't adjust for suburb size. So bigger suburbs in high volume corridors can naturally generate more browsing activity. So please don't treat this as a best suburbs list. Please treat it instead as a live indicator of where the buyer attention is clustering right now, and also therefore where competition can build quickly. If you like this style of market breakdown, being practical, research-led and Brisbane specific, please subscribe to the channel because we will keep producing content that helps buyers and investors to understand what's really happening on the ground across Greater Brisbane. So let's start with 3-bedroom houses, because this is one of the most competitive segments in Brisbane. 3-bedroom houses sit in that sweet spot. First home buyers, upsizers, downsizers who still want land, and also investors, so it is a broad buyer pool. Your top 10 suburbs for views per listing for 3-bedroom houses are Carina, Kalenga, Morningside, Strathpine, Goodna, Brighton, Redbank Plains, Ashgrove, Paddington, and Barden. Now, what's interesting here is the mix. You've got inner city and middle ring lifestyle favourites like Ashgrove, Paddington, Barden, Morningside and Carina sitting alongside more affordable corridors like Kalenga, Strathpine, Goodna and Redbank Plains. So that tells us something important. Brisbane isn't one market. Different buyer groups are chasing different versions of value. There's lifestyle value, family value and affordability value. And when you see a high number of views per listing, it often means one of two things. Either there's strong buyer demand or there's limited supply in that location. But quite often, it's also both. So with a quick extra lens, and I do want to point out, and I won't dwell on this, is that in a few suburbs, demand is very skewed to one product type. So for example, Strathpine is heavily 3-bedroom focused in this snapshot. It can reflect price sensitivity, the buyer profile, or simply what is most available. But it's a useful clue as to where the bulk of attention is actually sitting. And another quick observation, without turning this into an investment lesson, is that the suburbs that are attracting the most views aren't all the same from a yield perspective. There are some locations that have higher yields, some with much lower yields, and that simply means it's a reminder that high demand can come from different buyer motivations, owner-occupiers in some suburbs and investors in others. But the core message stays the same. The number of views show us where attention is concentrated right now. So let's now switch to 4-bedroom houses, and you'll notice that the map actually changes. Your top 10 suburbs by views per listing for 4-bedroom houses are Greenbank, Springfield Lakes, North Lakes, Narangba, Cleveland, Kenmore, Redbank Plains, The Gap, Hendra and Ashgrove. This list leans much more into what I'd call family upgrader markets. These are areas where buyers are chasing more space, more bedrooms, and often newer or larger homes. And you can clearly see demand clustering through key corridors. The outer north family corridor like North Lakes and Narangba, the southwest Ipswich adjacent growth markets like Greenbank and Springfield Lakes, and also established family favourites like Kenmore and The Gap. So again, this isn't about better or worse suburbs. It's about recognising that different product types pull different demand into different locations. One quick extra note here. In some suburbs, the 4-bedroom category dominates attention. Kenmore is a good example of this data set. But again, that's just a supporting clue. The headline is still where views per listing are the strongest for each product type. It is interesting to observe that 2 suburbs appear in both top 10 lists for both 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom houses. These suburbs are Ashgrove and Redbank Plains. And what's even more interesting is that they sit at very different price points. Ashgrove has a median value of $1,940,000 and Redbank Plains has a median value of $810,000. Yet both show strong buyer attention across both 3 and 4-bedroom categories. So it's a reminder that demand can be strong in completely different parts of the market for completely different reasons. Now here's the part that's most important. This will change month to month. Buyer preferences shift, interest rates shift, listing volumes shift, and the types of properties that are hitting the market also shifts. So the suburb list that you see this month can look very different next month. Not because the fundamentals have especially changed overnight, but because the activity or the buyer pool and the available stock is always moving. So that's why we treat this kind of metric as a live indicator, not a once-a-year report card. And this is exactly where a research-led buyer's agent can add real value. At Streamline Property Buyers, we are tracking demand signals like this regularly, and we cross-check these with what we're seeing on the ground. So we look at who's turning up to open homes, where competition is the strongest, where multiple offer situations are building, and where buyer urgency is increasing. Because when the online attention starts to align with what's happening in person on the ground, it's often a strong indicator that a suburb or a product type is about to get even tougher for buyers. So if you're buying in Brisbane and you want a team that's constantly watching these shifts, not just reacting to headlines, that is exactly what we do. If this breakdown helped you, please subscribe to the channel. It genuinely does help us to produce Brisbane-specific content like this. And drop a comment below. Which suburb surprised you the most? We look forward to bringing you more updates like this in the near future. Thank you so much and bye for now.